This is Wole Famurewa. I'm a tech entrepreneur, and welcome to another episode of Tech RoundUp Talk. On this show, we go into practical discussion with a subject matter expert and explore all things technology. We do this by discussing our guests' professional background, their rise to the top, and topical issues in the industry. On Tech RoundUp today, we have the privilege of welcoming Wole Famurewa, an experienced TV anchor and a business content producer with a demonstrated history of working in the broadcast media industry. Welcome, Wole.
Thank you very much, Wole.
It's good to have you here.
Well, it's good to be here too, and great job with this.
Thank you. Normally, roles are always reversed. I'm the one being interviewed, talking about e-commerce, payments, and the like. But
these things happen. Okay.
I guess. For the guys watching, I'm sure they are wondering, looking at your stellar career so far in media and TV, they're wondering, how did you make your career decisions to this point?
Well,
Can you share some of those?
Thank you for your generous assessment of my career. I would say my transition to broadcast and journalism, if you like, was really about some restlessness I had in my prior career in investment management and research.
Okay.
So I'd done that for a while, like a decade, and I was getting restless. I wanted to do something different. And literally it was a case of tuning into CNBC one day. Obviously before then I was a regular commentator on the channel.
Okay, so I understand the part around the content, what they're talking about, the industry, because you were at the time working in finance, you understood that. Were you not a little bit concerned about TV appearance itself, delivering, content on TV to a live audience, given that that wasn't your experience at the time?
No, it's a fair question, and I think with everything you embrace the challenge.
Okay.
But I think one of the things that helped me and perhaps gave me the confidence was that I knew the content. I felt content would not be a problem for me. Okay. And thankfully that was the case.
Yeah. So on this show, we'd like to quickly link whatever industry it is to technology and how technology is enabling that industry. Media is very peculiar. In fact, media is at the center of what technology is changing these days. So I was wondering what your thoughts are in terms of the positive impact that technology is having on media.
It's interesting you said media is at the center of the change in technology, but I think it's actually the other way around.
Okay.
Technology is really at the center of everything.
Okay.
So when you think about whatever...
I guess it depends on the perspective, right? So
True. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, practically any endeavor you are involved in today, is it finance, agriculture, manufacturing, technology is changing the game. Yeah. And that buzzword disruption is real. Yeah. And it's also real in the broadcast and media industry as well.
Okay.
From everything from how journalism is perceived, how journalism actually works in terms of your reporting. I can give you a good example. Right. Think about the likes of President Trump. President Trump obviously is a very different president. He embraces social media, and very often he announces things on social media
before other channels.
Before your regular press conference or interview setting. He pretty much doesn't wait to get the White House to put out a press release. He simply speaks his mind. But the truth is that as soon as he speaks his mind, it's become news. Yeah. So the interesting thing with that is that with President Trump having so many followers on social media, the news is actually getting to the people way before the traditional news media can report what has been said.
And put their spin on it.
And put their spin if there's...
if there's one.
Yes, indeed. So the point I'm making is that it has totally changed because social media has now become a new environment for people to relate. And the rules of that environment just means that things that happen so differently. So in my mind, I think the broadcast media and journalism as a whole has to adapt to that new reality. Yeah.
So one of the most glaring impact that technology has had on media is the emergence of social media and what can be done on social media. You gave the example of the US president and how he leverages Twitter to essentially engage the entire country on policies.
The world, indeed.
The world, indeed, on policies and things that, and stands of the United States on stuff, right? But I'm wondering, to folks in traditional media who have been doing this for hundreds of years, right? There's a structure. How is social media disruption, what kind of impact is it having on that industry? So for example, a good example is Wole Famurewa is interviewing Wole Famurewa. It's impact of technology, right? It's social media, and we're able to broadcast this to audience. Does that threaten you guys in any way, or are you guys embracing that reality that, you know, the world is changing?
So things change, and you simply have to adapt. In terms of it being a threat, I would say I won't really see it as a threat. I would see it more as just a reality. It's just my perspective. The world has changed. Social media is a reality, and it means that your business, whatever it is, also has to adapt to that.
Yeah.
Because the news and broadcast business really has to do with communicating and, you know, speaking to people and reporting to people. The fact that social media is also a community where people can speak to themselves really implies that virtually everyone can play in that space. So really the onus is on the traditional media people to up their game, to really emphasize what they have in terms of, you know, their quality, their ethics, and the standard of production. So as long as you can continue to elevate yourself in that way, I think broadcast media and whatever you're doing in that space will be relevant.
So I always think that one of the core benefits of social media is the nature, the real-time nature of engagement that you can get from audience. You know, people go live on all this platform, and essentially, as they are talking, people are communicating to them and reacting to what they are saying. There's a level of audience engagement in traditional media, but it's not nearly real time. Is that a factor that traditional media practitioners have to also think about? Because audience engagement is key. You know, I mean, audience give life. You are there because of the viewership. You are there because people are listening to what you are saying, consuming it, and reacting to it. Is there something there that traditional media must pay attention to?
Absolutely, and I would say that traditional media is already doing that.
Okay.
You've got to realize that, as I mentioned, because of technology, the mobile phone and the internet, and the evolution of social media, you've got to realize where your audience is. And it's really a whole new world in terms of how if you like, the news business or the broadcast business is. So in the past, you probably buy a newspaper and read whatever news or editorial is in there, and you have your thoughts, but you keep your thoughts to yourself. But now technology is allowing you to share your thoughts with the person that wrote that article, or the organization that wrote the article, or if it's a movie or sports show, you can immediately share your thoughts. And you know, because social media has really become so much of a big part of culture now, that everything seems to happen on social media. People are sharing their experiences. So sharing their thoughts on what they are viewing on media is part of that. So whoever is putting out the content needs to appreciate that is the reality, and they also have to be part of that process. Otherwise, you are not. It's like you're serving a product and you're not paying attention to what your customer wants.
Exactly.
You've got to pay attention to that, and that's what the audience wants right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So as this convergence between social and traditional media emerges and plays on, what are your predictions for the future in terms of where you see media going with all that we're witnessing happening around us?
So by media, I believe you mean news and broadcasting.
Everything, you know, the way any channel that, you know, people pass information to other people.
I think the first thing is that I think the players will just continue to increase, because just like yourself, you're more or less part of that now by what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, and it's the barrier of entry is less.
Okay. Yeah. That's
and
true.
unfortunately, I think, in my opinion, it's the sad dynamic with that is that there's less attention to ethics and regulation. So in the past, there's an ethics to journalism and so forth. I think while many of the players in that space, want to continue to embrace that culture, because of social media, it seems to be less. Try to say less important, but it's tougher to regulate that, because one, there's pressure to be first, and so the culture of making sure that you vet whatever content you have
disappears
before
diminishes,
because of the pressure to make sure that you're first. So it is putting pressure in that way, I think.
But do people do they get punished, at the end of the day, for not being careful enough to vet stories before they push them out? I remember a big story. I think there's been a lot of back and forth about the current political climate in the US. There was a big story that broke about 6 months ago in one of the very big publications. It wasn't really vetted, and 2 days later, it was clear that they had not done the work that they were supposed to do. It hurt that publication because it's in the traditional space, and there were a lot of pushback to, I'm sure that the next story, nobody's going to pay attention to it. Does the same thing, or will the same thing start to happen on social media, at least to sort of differentiate, the serious players versus
no?
Those
Yes, I think there will still be a reward for doing things right. But the point I'm trying to make is, at the same time, you are dealing with, I guess you can use the lingo of fake news here.
Yeah.
You're dealing with the fact that there is so much propaganda or unvetted information out there that, in my mind, I feel it needs to be regulated in one way or the other. It's just a bit tricky trying to do that and not inhibiting things like free speech and all of that.
Yeah. So as we close out, as you can imagine, our audience is composed of people with passion for technology, technology entrepreneurs, people who follow technology and follow technology news. And I'm sure many of them are thinking, as things are evolving in media, there are going to be opportunities for innovators to come in and develop platforms or provide tools for platforms for people to broadcast. So as people are thinking about, coming into the space, bringing technology
entrepreneurship, so to speak.
Yeah, entrepreneurship, coming into the space, bringing innovation into the space. With your background, what are the 3 top things you would advise people to think about as they want to embark on that journey? Am
I limited to 3? Well,
go for it.
I guess I will just share my thoughts.
Yeah.
The first one I think will be, I think there is a value in being focused on what you can do very well.
Okay.
I recall reading, I think it was the Google story many years ago, and the big takeaway from that story is that they were able to do one thing extremely well. And then based on that, they were able to go into other things. So I think that will be one. And, stay the course. Stay the course. Sometimes it may take a while for your content to become...
To generate the kind of following that you're looking for.
To generate the big following and traction.
Yep.
So you just got to stick with it. So I think that will be one. And I mean, if I was going to make an appeal, try and be ethical as much as possible.
Okay.
Because, as I mentioned earlier, there is that pressure to do things in a way that is not proper. I mean, take for instance, one of the big challenges with media today is that, there's so much copyright infringement. People, if you really think about it, any content you put on social media is your content.
Yeah.
And in my mind, someone who wants to use it needs to at least get your permission to do it. But you can just imagine all the content that is all over the internet today, from video content to graphic content and everything else.
Everybody's just using whatever.
Everyone simply just goes there, grabs what they will need, and just use it. So, and it's all because maybe media and content on the internet, so to speak, is so much that where do you get the regulation? It's a challenge. So if you like, it's a personal appeal, but I also think that doing things right at the end of the day always pays off.
Yeah, there you have it. So Mr. Famurewa is saying, if you are focused on this space, the three things are focus on your strengths, the areas that you're strong. The second thing would be to persevere. It's not going to be smooth all the time. And lastly, be ethical. And I think it goes beyond just the space. I think in everything that we do, ethics is important. That's Absolutely. It for this episode. We'll wait to see, can't wait to come back again where we bring another guest on the show. But until that time, see you all and have a good night. Wole, thanks for coming.
Great job, Wole. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.